Good morning, everybody.
Hello, and welcome to another of our monthly Q&A episodes.
And as this is September, I like to trot out all of the old cards to show you how long that we've been doing Ace Q&As for you guys.
And how we don't spend any real time or energy on production values because those cards look terrible. That one's got like coffee.
This one
stains
has
all
coffee
over it.
stains on it, but this is the original card.
Okay.
This is from the first year of Q&As.
Oh.
So there you go. That's how long we've been doing these. All right.
Questions from our Crowfall community. So the first one starts with a nice comment, a bit of praise.
Okay.
Doesn't happen very often, so that's nice.
I'll take it.
Well, in these meetings, it's mostly questions, right? So, okay, so the first question says, I have to say I've enjoyed the addition of the camps and towers in the 5-7 build. They add a lot more depth to the landscape, and they're useful targets for smaller players. And that's accurate. That we kind of talked about siege activities for various groups, right? Mm-hmm. We had, sieges, which is really teams of 50 plus. The keep sieges. Then we had forts, which is generally a kind of group on group, right?
Yeah, it ends up being a group on group.
Yeah,
fight.
A couple groups against a couple groups. So you're looking at probably 15 to 20 players on either side. So we didn't have anything that was like, all right, well, what's good for one group? So we thought, the archer towers would be great for that. And then what's good for an individual, like just me and one person.
Right.
And we thought the campfires would be good for that. So yes, you're correct. That's exactly why we put these in for moment-to-moment gameplay for smaller groups. That said, can you fix the alert system? Because basically it's impossible to know what's going on. So yes. In 5.8 we're going to do an overhaul of we call them the toast message system. What's that from? Why is it?
That's from Siege Perilous.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's when we put those little toasts in that says the keep is under attack.
Why is it called a toast message? Do you know?
Because they're called toasts.
They are? Okay.
Yeah,
anyway, it's a toast message, and so this version is still very simple.
It's like toasting, like you got an achievement or something like that. It just hit me.
Is that why?
That's why.
It's not like
it's based on like an achievement system where you get the little toast.
It's not like toast from a toaster
and it's
popping
like,
up.
Hey, you got a thing. No, it's not from a toaster.
Toaster toast pops up when it's done. It pops, and those things pop up.
I'm right on this one.
I think it's toaster toast. All right. Anyway,
raise your glasses.
So the prior system was pretty simplistic. Like it just kind of pops up messages. Yeah. So there's a few things that we need to do to make that system better. One is we need various broadcast levels.
Right. It shouldn't be to the whole zone.
Right. So as you guys know, we now have multi-zone clusters. So a cluster of worlds, including the beachheads and areas to fight over. The next version, 5.8, will have multiple of those, including both siege zones and adventuring zones.
Right.
So we will have toast messages that are in a radius, which is probably what the campfires and the towers will be within. Mm-hmm. They'll only alert you within a radius. If they have guards, the ones that have guards, which I think they all do.
They all have guards.
The guards will actually alert you within a radius if they see an enemy combatant, which will be cool, but it won't be zone wide. So the next step up is zone wide. Tell everybody who's in this zone, and then we'll have also one that is broadcast across the entire game. So It'll probably break out like. Keeps are going to be across all the worlds. Forts may be only zone wide.
Correct.
And then the archers' towers and the campfires, or the outposts and the campfires, will be radius, large radius, small radius. Something like that would be my guess. So
it should make sense.
Yep, should make sense. So that's all going to be coming in 5.8.
All right, next question.
Okay, what determines the rank of a camp or tower? So I think there was a little bit of, when they first came up, the guards were set incorrectly. There were some balance issues. Like the radius of the guards initially was so great that they were plinking and killing all the monsters.
Because we reused the fort guard rather than make a new guard for the towers. And the fort guards shoot a really long way because they've got to deal all the way out to the walls.
And monsters are technically not a part of the faction, right?
Correct.
So as soon as a player would snag one of those campfires, the guards would immediately start plinking the nearby, because they're archers, right? They would immediately start nailing all of the nearby creatures.
So I went and flogged design.
Okay.
And then we made another NPC.
Okay.
So we made a outpost NPC, and now there's a fort NPC who can shoot forever.
Okay.
And the fort ones have a very short range because they're there to protect that keep, or I'm sorry, they're there to protect that outpost.
Okay.
Right?
So the outpost ones have a short range to protect the outpost.
Correct.
That's what you meant to say.
And yes, that is exactly what I meant to say. And then if you try and cheese them by going out to max player range, they will update their range and respond appropriately.
Okay, so they have 2 ranges.
Correct.
One is the range at which you aggro them. So you have a notice you and attack you range. But then they have a slightly larger, you're still in my bow range. You've already aggroed me and I'm going to keep attacking you.
Correct.
Right? So those are 2 different things. So I think that's already in.
Yeah, it is.
It probably requires a little bit more and like another pass.
We'll tune it, but we didn't want basically them killing all of the wildlife in the areas because people were just sitting there and just farming the NPCs.
Yeah.
And at that point, why do we put combat in?
Yeah.
If the towers are just going to kill all the NPCs for you?
Right.
Right? So obviously we had to fix that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so the ranking system that we have is actually an inheritance system. So the rank of the parcel is determined by its location in the zone and also the zone, the world itself. Like that particular continent has a rank so that we can make some of these continents have higher rewards, but also higher monsters, right?
Correct.
So, and then even within that map, as you typically get further away from the rune gates and more towards the center or more towards something that's important like a POI, that rank goes up.
Yep.
Right? So that basically is causing the threat level to increase just...
Everything on the parcel shares the rank.
Yeah, exactly. So the threat level, the risk and the reward both go up at the same time.
For everything,
for everything.
You won't see like a rank 1 right next to a rank 8. That's not how it works.
Cool.
Everything in this area will be rank 8 or rank 3 or whatever that parcel is.
At parcel boundaries, you can sometimes see a little variation.
Sometimes.
Like on this side of the boundary, it's going to be a rank 5, and on the other side, it might be a rank 3.
But there is some space in between.
There's always a little bit of buffer, and it shouldn't be that dramatic.
Correct.
So that's cool. I didn't realize that the guards were rigged up that way. See, I learned something. Okay, so could the camps have some kind of a chest that opens up when captured? Basically, can we juice these outposts to make them have more rewards? And certainly we could. I've heard everything from put a vendor there to put building materials that spawn
to make
there.
the campfire actually a crafting, like an actual interactable
and
crafting.
We have some of that now. They work as campfires.
They
right?
do.
So I do think that there's a little station right there that looks like a cooking station. And I suggested we hook that up. I don't know if that's been done.
No, it hasn't. But we could.
That would be really cool. So yes, I think those are great suggestions. Keep those coming. I would love for these outposts and campfires, both the towers and the campfires, to have more of an in-game purpose to make them more attractive for people to capture. Because that's the whole point. We want people kind of trading these things. All right, let's talk about the range bonus. This one sounds like one for you. So I will say that in my opinion, the ranges seem really far.
Yeah.
Just in general, we kind of went a little overkill, and I can kill people who are like,
yes, and as part of 5.8, we are pulling that way back.
Actually, so I guess I should say I can be killed by people who are this big on my screen.
Rangers could
I'm usually on the tail end of that.
We had this idea that Rangers were snipers and they could go way off into the distance.
Yeah, and that still should be true.
It's just not way off.
Yeah, I think it's just it's a little too. We want.
It also diminishes the other range guys because they don't feel as good as the guy who can shoot out to the moon. Right. So we're going to bring a lot of that back in. We were very generous with the amount of range we were giving out as a stat.
Yep.
And basically, as I equated it, we were treating it more like attack power than treating it like damage bonus.
Right.
Damage bonus is one of our premium stats because it's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Right. And attack power, we give you that all over the place because it's not as powerful.
And through different ways, right? Different avenues to get it as well.
But with range, we were treating it like attack power and just giving it out far too frequently and far too much. So we've cranked some of that back down. So we're trying to bring the combat in a little bit, which will mean the melee guys suffer less because people aren't out to the moon, right? And there aren't people killing you from where you can't even see.
Yeah, sure.
So it should help a lot of things in 5.8. So we're starting to get more and more balancing.
Perfect. So the next question then that kind of ties into that is weapon weight.
So we have the weapon weight stat. So you pick up a weapon and generally it will have a higher damage bonus if it has a higher weight. It's a heavier weapon.
Makes sense.
Right?
Like great weapons, effectively.
Correct.
Right?
But what that means is your swings cost you more to do.
Okay.
Right? Because it's less efficient.
Yeah.
Right? Until we start putting magical ones in that are also damaging and efficient. But we haven't got there yet.
Well, and we'll do the opposite. We'll have lighter weapons that do more damage than they should. So again, it's still...
It gives us an axis.
Gives
before.
Us another
knob
to turn.
All we had was damage.
Yeah.
And all of the weapons felt the same. Right? So we added this in, and now we can start making changes. It affects your cooldown rate for the people who use pips because they really didn't care about energy because they didn't have energy or mana or anything.
Right, that makes sense.
Right, they have pips. So we make their cooldowns get more inefficient if they use a heavier weapon.
Okay.
So the choice there is, do I want to do more damage with my cooldowns, which will change my rotation a little bit?
Yeah.
A little different. It also decreases your basic attack damage because we didn't want people just picking the heaviest weapon and stop using their powers.
Yeah, just using it.
Because usually basic attacks have no cost.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to, for most of the classes, I think the only ones that do is Myrmidon and Confessor. But that's because not all our classes are equal, right? They're just different. So basically, the ways to counteract a heavy weapon is you can sacrifice a passive slot and pick up Weapon Finesse or Mental Fortitude, which makes your attacks cheaper.
Okay.
So there are ways to counterbalance it. There's also some skill training that you can do that lowers the cost of all your powers. So I think there's a nice system going on in there, and there's some fine-tuning we need to do. And, of course, we're going to continue to balance those numbers and put in more weapons that have different avenues. So I think it will be fun in the end game.
Right. All right. Next question is a question about sacrifice value. So basically, what's the question here?
It's kind of encapsulated in I can see a sacrifice value for my vessel, even though I can't sacrifice it.
Okay.
Right? Because once you consume a vessel,
it's turned into an avatar. It's turned into a character.
You can't sacrifice it. The only thing you can do at that point is delete that character. Right? We don't have a way to pull that thing out there and give it back to you. But what we do is we have a universal tooltip little widget that says, hey, what is this thing worth?
Yeah.
And we don't have any code around it right now saying, hey, don't show it for this, show it for this.
Right.
It's just kind of blanket. It was a blanket approach to
it actually is important to have that value, though, because if you craft a bum vessel, right, it's like, all right, I got it. It did work. I got a vessel out of my crafting, but it's not a great one. You might decide that you want to sacrifice it before it's been used. And so we want it to have a value, right? It's just the weird thing is that it still looks like an item after you've equipped it.
Right.
And that's just a kind of it's from underneath the covers, technically you are equipping that body. Like that's what's kind of interesting about the system, just like the runestones, everything snaps on you. One of the oddities though is that occasionally the fact that it works that way under the covers surfaces to the user and they're like, well, that's very weird. But it helps a lot from our standpoint internally because it means we can use all of our design and balance tools and our import mechanics, our whole pipeline. It makes it easy because it's just another object, right?
And every object in Crowfall has a value.
Right, that's true. Everything has to have a value.
Everything should have a value because we should always be able to sacrifice to the gods.
Right. Well, that's part of the overall loop.
Correct.
Right? All right. Boo! Next one. Testing with no skills is very hard. Is there any chance we can have a test server maxed on all the skills? Which I think is funny because the ask before 5.7 was, oh dear God, can you please wipe the skills?
Right.
So we're going to keep ping-ponging this way. It's just, it's kind of the nature of things. I like us to wipe though every now and then because we need to always keep in mind what the game's going to be like at the very beginning. And if we screw up and it's like, oh crap, this particular thing is a core part of the loop and they're not going to have access to it for 3 months. That's a problem. We need to think about that. So, we've been making changes to deal with that. We'll continue doing it. Will we do a one with max skills? I wouldn't max it. We already have a knob on the test server that we can be like, crank up the time, but crank up the time bank and crank up the accumulation of skill points. We would do it that way. We just crank it up to 10 or 20 or 100 times. So maybe. Not sure. If we need to, we'll do it. All right. Training questions I keep getting asked. Why can't people train trees that share the parent paths? This was to keep people from double dipping. I do recognize that as a problem. That was an unintended consequence is that, I can't do 2 fighters at once. And that's dumb.
It's racing class.
Not what we wanted. We do have plans in place to fix this. We're not ready to talk about them yet, but we're not quite done with skills. So I promise we'll come back to it. And we will definitely address that issue. Racial abilities. So this was a question that I think I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I read it as, why don't we auto-load out things like Ganeshan Burrow or the dodges? Why don't we load those out?
Actually, we got the tech in yesterday to auto-load out dodges.
Oh, we did? Okay, great.
Yeah, so
awesome.
that's going to happen. But this question was more, hey, why when design makes 2 powers, why do they just give some of that to Minotaur, like frontal stun immunity? Yeah. That's just built into the Minotaur.
Right.
And why are some
Passives.
things, it's not even a passive.
Okay.
You don't have to load anything out. We just make a check when we're building powers when we stun you. Are you a Minotaur, and is it from the front?
Oh, that's effectively a passive, though, right?
Well, no, because a passive costs you a slot, and you only have 3 slots.
Right, okay, free passives.
These are free passives.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
Why does design just go, hey, you know what? Minotaurs get frontal stun immunity.
Yeah.
Whereas these guys have to press a button to do their thing.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, it's just because we feel they need that seasoning.
Right.
Right? It's just like, you know what? Minotaur should be frontal stun immune. And
it's also a balancing mechanic, right? Deciding that somebody should have something all the time is clearly more beneficial than giving them the optionality, but they have to choose between that and something else because it fills out a slot. So really, it's a balanced question. So ultimately, I like that from a system standpoint, we have the optionality to be able to decide this is a free passive, this is a optionality passive, this is a optionality power, right? And we could do free powers, but generally don't because we don't support that in the UI, right? We have to actively give them, but actually, I suppose we do. That's kind of what a stance is, giving you.
Yeah, we could do it if we wanted to.
Yeah,
it's just,
for example, is an example of granting you a whole new set of things you can load out.
A lot of times it's top-down design. You're like, you know what? I shouldn't be able to stun a Minotaur from the front. I want to make sure every Minotaur does that.
Yeah,
and we just give it to them.
Yeah,
right. So, and a lot of times it's just like, why do Ganetians get an extra ring? They don't have to do anything for it. Right. They have an extra ring slot. Yeah. High elves have an extra necklace slot.
Yeah, because it's
right. We just kind of cool. We sprinkle them around where we feel they need them.
Well, why does Ganetians get burrow? Because we think it's cool. I mean, ultimately, that is a lot of it, right? So it's on us then to later go back and try and balance these so that it's not like, well, these guys got everything and these guys got nothing. Right. And that's an ongoing process. It's. I know it seems easy from an outside standpoint to look at balance and just say, well, make it all perfect. It doesn't really work that way, and it's not even really one of our goals. I kind of like the system to be messy, and messy means you're going to have some things that are better.
The other way to do it would be more mechanical. You come from the bottom up. Everybody gets 15 points, and you allocate those 15 points to things.
Yeah, sure, you can do that, and to some degree, we try and use those approaches like with stats and attributes and things like that. But it's still a gut-level call. I have to decide what the natural burrow ability is worth.
Right. What is frontal stun worth on a point scale?
On a point scale.
I don't know.
At the end of the day, it is kind of it's more qualitative than quantitative, right? A lot of it is guesswork. So I'm sorry that I misunderstood and answered the wrong question first, but hopefully now we've answered both the question I thought you asked and the one you actually asked. So
there you go.
Itemization. So this is a great one that was like, hey. So much of our gear now gives a grant, like a bonus to a max stat, and that is kind of worthless at the early game when nobody's getting close to the maxes anyway. And I thought this was a great point, which was they reminded me that in Shadowbane, when you gave a bonus to a max stat, you also always gave a bonus to the base. So it's like plus 10 to the max strength and plus 5 or plus 10 or whatever. So I meant to come by and talk to you about this one.
5-7 was actually... So 5-7
I wanted to do it. I agree with the player on this one. I think that's a great point. So
5-7 is where we got caps.
Yeah.
So this was our first...
So of course you sprinkle them in all over the place.
I just sprinkle them in all over. It's like, let's see what these do.
Yeah.
Right? How do they feel on the game, right? Yeah. And of course we're going to tweak, and we're definitely going to give you the base values as well as the
so I think we should absolutely do that. It's a great suggestion. I just didn't think about it, and I can never quite remember when these things come in, so I'm delighted to hear that we got the max stat increases in at all.
It's really cool. We're doing a lot of fun stuff with that.
But yes, great idea. We'll definitely do that. We'll definitely get that in.
Motherlode farming is the last one.
Okay, go ahead. So basically, when farming motherlodes, minerals and gems drop at 75, 50, 25 remaining, but they never drop when the node is destroyed. Is this intended?
That is intended.
It is intended.
When a node is destroyed, you get the critical hit rolls.
Okay.
So that's when you can do a critical and just send Ubers flying.
And so your fear is that those two things combined is going to be...
universe ending.
Yeah. Overpowering in a way that is unbalanced.
Right. So you have 3 chances on every node to get one of these. We call them the per hit tables.
Okay.
Right. And that's where you see minerals, gems, cutting grit, honeycomb, heartwood, all of our kind of rare stuff. You get 3 of those chances per node, any type of node, except the base level resources. You just see it on the named resources. And then on the final kaboom, you get the chance for the critical.
Cool. All right.
That's how it works.
All right. So that was the last question. So I want to thank everybody for joining us again for another session of the Ace Q&A video. Keep the questions coming and the feedback. Keep playing 5.7 and giving us your thoughts and comments. Super excited that we're now moving into 5.8 and we're going to have the first campaign moving forward. So
and a slew of other things. So we will hit you next month with another set of questions. Until then, we'll see you on the forums. All right. Thanks.
And see you in game.
Thanks for coming out.